Look around you. Everything is fighting for your attention. Your phone, your notifications, endless entertainment, endless opinions, endless excuses. And while most people are being distracted, a small group is quietly building their future. The difference is not talent. The difference is discipline. Your future depends on what you can ignore today. Every distraction you entertain steals energy from the life you say you want. This audiobook will teach you how to build iron discipline in a world designed to weaken it. Because in the end, success belongs to the person who can stay focused long after everyone else has been distracted. Chapter 1. Stop negotiating with yourself. Most people think discipline is difficult because they believe it requires extraordinary effort. It doesn't. What makes discipline difficult is something much simpler, something most people never notice. They negotiate with themselves every day, every hour, sometimes every minute. They negotiate when the alarm clock rings. They negotiate when it's time to exercise. They negotiate when it's time to work. They negotiate when it's time to study. They negotiate when it's time to stop scrolling. And every negotiation costs them something. Energy, focus, momentum, self-respect. The moment you turn a commitment into a debate, you create an opportunity for weakness to enter. That's the problem. You said you would wake up at 6. The alarm rings. Now the negotiation begins. Maybe just 10 more minutes. I'm tired. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. Notice what happened. The decision was already made yesterday. But today, you're reopening the case. You're putting your commitment on trial. Again, and again, and again. This is why so many people remain stuck, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack potential, because they never stop negotiating. Discipline begins where negotiation ends. That's the key. Read that again. Discipline begins where negotiation ends. The disciplined person does not spend 20 minutes deciding whether to do the workout. The workout was already decided. The disciplined person does not debate whether to write, whether to study, whether to practice, whether to show up. The decision has already been made, and once a decision has been made, action follows. This is how high performers think. They eliminate unnecessary decisions. They understand something most people ignore. Every decision consumes energy. Every debate drains focus. Every internal argument weakens commitment. So they remove the argument entirely. They don't ask how they feel. They ask what must be done. That's a completely different mindset. Most people wake up asking, "How do I feel today?" The disciplined person asks, "What needs to be done today?" One question creates excuses. The other creates results. Feelings change constantly. Responsibilities do not. Motivation changes constantly. Commitments do not. Energy changes constantly. Standards do not. That's the difference. The average person follows feelings. The disciplined person follows decisions. You have a choice, but the choice must be made once. Not every morning. Not every afternoon. Not every time discomfort appears. Once, and then repeated. Think about an athlete preparing for a championship. Imagine waking up before sunrise. The weather is terrible. The body is sore. Motivation is nowhere to be found. Do you think elite athletes leap out of bed every day excited to train? Of course not. They're human. They experience the same emotions everyone else does. The difference is simple. They don't negotiate. Training is not optional. Training is part of their identity. Whether they feel inspired or uninspired, whether they feel energetic or exhausted. The decision was made long ago, and because the decision was made, action follows. Discipline begins where negotiation ends. Consider the worker who consistently outperforms everyone around them. People often assume they possess some secret advantage, a special talent, a unique gift. But look closer. The real advantage is usually invisible. They show up before inspiration arrives. They start before they feel ready. They execute before they feel confident. While others are waiting for perfect conditions, they are already moving. While others are debating, they are doing. While others are negotiating, they are progressing. That's the difference. You don't need their permission. You don't need motivation's permission. You don't need comfort's permission. You don't need confidence's permission. You simply need action. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates results. But action always comes first. That's the key. Many people spend years trying to feel disciplined, instead of becoming disciplined. There is a difference. Feeling disciplined is emotional. Being disciplined is behavioral. One depends on mood. The other depends on standards. And standards win every time. Imagine two people. Both have the same goal. Both want to improve their lives. Both want better health, better finances, better opportunities. The first person negotiates constantly. The second person follows through immediately. 1 year later, who has transformed? Not the smarter person, not the luckier person, the more disciplined person. Always, because success compounds. Every completed action creates another opportunity. Every avoided action creates another excuse. Small choices become large outcomes. The person who skips one workout rarely notices. The person who skips 1 hour of study rarely notices. The person who wastes one evening rarely notices. But years later, the consequences become impossible to ignore. The problem was never the single decision. The problem was the habit of negotiation. Every negotiation teaches the brain something dangerous. It teaches that commitments are optional, that standards are flexible, that promises can be broken, especially promises made to yourself. And once self-trust begins to disappear, everything becomes harder. You stop believing your own goals. You stop believing your own plans. You stop believing your own words. That is the hidden cost of negotiation. It destroys trust between you and yourself. The solution is simple, not easy, but simple. Make fewer decisions. Create clear standards. Follow them automatically. If you said you will wake up at 6, wake up at 6. If you said you will read 20 pages, read 20 pages. If you said you will train, train. No debate, no discussion, no negotiation. You have a choice, but the choice must be made once. Then your responsibility is execution. This is how discipline becomes iron, not through heroic effort, but through repeated obedience to your own standards, day after day, week after week, year after year. Eventually, something powerful happens. The voice of negotiation grows weaker. The voice of discipline grows stronger. Action becomes automatic. Commitment becomes identity. You stop asking whether you should do the work. You simply do it. And that is where real freedom begins. Because discipline is not a prison. Discipline is liberation from endless internal conflict. Discipline removes the debate. Discipline removes the hesitation. Discipline removes the chaos. Discipline begins where negotiation ends. Remember that, because in a world filled with distractions, temptations, and excuses, the people who win are not those with the most motivation. They are the people who stop negotiating with themselves. They decide, and then they act. That's the foundation of iron discipline. Master this lesson, and everything else becomes easier. Because before you can defeat distraction, you must first defeat indecision. You ended the negotiation. Now it's time to understand the enemy that wants your attention every single day. Chapter 2. Distraction is the new addiction. Look around. The battle for your future is no longer being fought in factories. It is no longer being fought in offices. It is no longer being fought on battlefields. It is being fought for your attention. Right now, every single day. And most people are losing, not because they are weak, not because they are incapable, because they don't realize they are under attack. Modern distractions are not accidents. They are businesses. Entire industries make billions of dollars by capturing your attention and keeping it for as long as possible. Every notification, every alert, every recommendation, every endless scroll, every autoplay video, every piece of content designed to keep you engaged. Someone is getting richer from your distraction, and you are paying with the most valuable resource you possess, your attention. That's the key. Most people think time is their greatest asset. It isn't. Attention is, because attention determines how you spend your time. And how you spend your time determines your future. You have a choice. You can invest your attention, or you can surrender it. Those are the only options. Think about the average day. You wake up. Before your feet touch the floor, you check your phone. A message, a notification, a headline, a video, a comment. 5 minutes becomes 15. 15 becomes 30. And before the day has even started, your mind has already been hijacked. Your focus has been scattered across dozens of unrelated things. Now imagine repeating that process every day for 5 years. Do you think there will be consequences? Of course there will, because distraction compounds, just like discipline compounds. Most people underestimate the damage because each distraction feels small. One video, one notification, one quick check, one harmless scroll. But success is not destroyed in one dramatic moment. Success is usually destroyed in small pieces. One distraction at a time. One wasted hour at a time. One broken focus session at a time. And that's why distraction has become the new addiction. Unlike traditional addictions, this one looks normal. Everyone is doing it. Everyone is carrying it in their pocket. Everyone is participating, which makes it even more dangerous. The distracted person rarely realizes they are distracted. They believe they are informed. They believe they are connected. They believe they are multitasking. But the truth is different. They are reacting, constantly reacting. And reaction is the enemy of discipline. Disciplined people decide. Distracted people react. That's the difference. Every interruption fragments mental energy. Imagine trying to build a house. Every 10 minutes, someone forces you to stop. Leave. Come back. Start again. Leave. Come back. Start again. How long would it take? Far longer than necessary. Your mind works the same way. Every interruption forces your brain to restart, to refocus, to rebuild momentum, and every restart costs energy. Most people never notice this invisible tax, but they feel the consequences. Difficulty concentrating, difficulty finishing tasks, difficulty reading, difficulty thinking deeply, difficulty remaining present. The ability to focus is becoming rare, and rarity creates value. The person who can focus for 3 uninterrupted hours now has a massive advantage over the person who cannot focus for 30 minutes. That's the reality of the modern world. Focus is becoming a superpower, and distraction is becoming a weakness. You have a choice. Protect your attention, or surrender your future. There is no middle ground. Consider two people. Both are equally intelligent. Both are equally talented. Both begin at the same starting line. The first person protects attention aggressively. They schedule focused work. They limit distractions. They use technology intentionally. They decide what deserves attention. The second person does the opposite. Every notification gets checked. Every message gets answered immediately. Every trend gets followed. Every distraction gets entertained. At first, there appears to be no difference. A day passes. A week passes. A month passes. The gap is almost invisible. But then something interesting happens. The gap begins to widen. One person completes projects. The other starts projects. One develops expertise. The other develops opinions. One builds skills. The other consumes content. One creates. The other reacts. 5 years later, their lives look completely different. Not because one was more talented, not because one was luckier, because one protected attention. That's the key. The quality of your attention determines the quality of your future. The distracted mind struggles to create. The focused mind builds. The distracted mind chases novelty. The focused mind pursues mastery. The distracted mind seeks stimulation. The focused mind seeks progress. And progress always wins. This is why discipline requires attention management. You cannot be disciplined while allowing every distraction to control you. The two are incompatible. It's not about technology. It's about discipline. It's not about social media. It's about discipline. It's not about notifications. It's about discipline. The technology is not the problem. The lack of boundaries is the problem. A disciplined person uses tools. An undisciplined person is used by them. There is a difference. One controls attention. The other loses attention. And wherever attention goes, life follows. So what should you do? Start small. Turn off unnecessary notifications. Create periods of uninterrupted focus. Stop reaching for your phone every moment of boredom. Learn to sit with silence. Learn to sit with stillness. Learn to sit with your own thoughts. Because every time you resist distraction, you strengthen discipline. Every time you choose focus over entertainment, you strengthen discipline. Every time you protect your attention, you strengthen discipline. And over time, those small victories become a powerful identity. You stop being someone who reacts. You become someone who directs, someone who chooses, someone who controls their attention instead of surrendering it. That is how iron discipline is built. Not in dramatic moments, but in daily battles for attention. Remember this: the world is designed to distract you. Companies profit from distraction. Algorithms profit from distraction. Entertainment profits from distraction. But your future depends on focus. Your goals depend on focus. Your discipline depends on focus. You have a choice. And that choice appears every single day. Will you react? Or will you direct? Will you consume? Or will you create? Will you surrender your attention? Or will you protect it? Because the person who controls attention controls destiny. You have learned how distraction steals your future. Now it's time to discover where your attention should go instead. Because attention is not merely something you protect. It is something you invest. And that investment determines everything. Chapter 3. Your attention creates your future. There is a truth most people never fully understand. Your future is not built by what you want. It is built by what you repeatedly pay attention to. Read that again. Your future is not built by what you want. It is built by what you repeatedly pay attention to. Everyone says they want success. Everyone says they want confidence. Everyone says they want financial freedom. Everyone says they want a better life. But wanting is easy. Attention is expensive. And your attention reveals what truly matters to you. Not your words, not your intentions, not your plans, your attention. That's the key. Because whatever receives consistent attention grows, skills grow, habits grow, knowledge grows, relationships grow, businesses grow. But the opposite is also true. Anxiety grows, distraction grows, fear grows, excuses grow, problems grow. Attention is like water. Whatever you pour it into becomes stronger. You have a choice. You can strengthen what serves you, or you can strengthen what weakens you. Every day you're making that choice, whether you realize it or not. Think about a garden. If you water the flowers grow. If you water the weeds grow. Nature does not care about your intentions. It responds to your actions. Your mind works exactly the same way. Many people spend hours feeding worry, then wonder why anxiety grows. Many people spend years feeding distraction, then wonder why focus disappears. Many people spend decades feeding excuses, then wonder why achievement remains distant. The answer is simple. They watered the wrong things. Where attention goes, results follow. That's the key. Most people think focus is merely concentration. It isn't. Focus is direction. Focus determines the trajectory of your life. Every day, your attention is casting votes. Votes for the person you are becoming. Votes for the habits you are building. Votes for the future you will eventually experience. Nothing happens instantly. That's why people miss it. Attention compounds quietly, the same way interest compounds in a bank account. A small investment today seems insignificant, but years later the results become undeniable. Imagine spending 30 minutes every day learning a valuable skill. Reading, studying, practicing, improving. 30 minutes doesn't seem like much. Most people can waste 30 minutes without even noticing. But what happens after a year? What happens after 3 years? What happens after 5 years? The person who invested attention has transformed, not overnight, not dramatically, but permanently. Now imagine the alternative. 30 minutes becomes an hour becomes 2. Years spent consuming endless entertainment, watching others succeed, watching others create, watching others build, while creating nothing themselves. Again, the consequences aren't immediate. That's what makes it dangerous. The cost arrives later, and by the time it arrives, years have already passed. This is why attention is so powerful. It shapes identity before it shapes outcomes. Long before success becomes visible, habits are forming. Long before results appear, focus patterns are being established. Long before achievement arrives, attention is creating the foundation. You don't become successful the day success appears. You become successful during the thousands of moments nobody sees, the moments where attention was invested wisely. That's the difference. Consider 2 people. Both start with similar abilities. Both have access to the same information. Both have the same 24 hours. One invests attention into learning. Books, skills, practice, growth. The other invests attention into distraction, entertainment, drama, gossip, endless consumption. For a while, nothing appears different. The gap is invisible. But then time does what time always does. It multiplies. One person becomes more knowledgeable, more capable, more valuable, more confident. The other remains largely the same, not because of intelligence, not because of talent, because of attention. Where attention goes, results follow. The modern world tries to convince you that attention is free. It isn't. Attention is one of the most valuable assets you possess. Because every moment spent on one thing is a moment unavailable for another. When you give attention to distractions, you take attention away from growth. When you give attention to excuses, you take attention away from action. When you give attention to fear, you take attention away from opportunity. This is why disciplined people guard their attention fiercely. They understand the hidden cost. They understand that attention is life. Where attention goes, life follows. You don't need their permission. You don't need permission to focus. You don't need permission to learn. You don't need permission to improve. You only need a decision to direct attention intentionally. Most people spend their days reacting. Disciplined people spend their days directing. There is a difference. Reaction gives power away. Direction takes power back. That's the key. Every morning, ask yourself a simple question. What deserves my attention today? Not what demands it. What deserves it? Those are very different things. Many things demand attention. Few things deserve it. Notifications demand attention. Goals deserve attention. Drama demands attention. Growth deserves attention. Entertainment demands attention. Purpose deserves attention. You have a choice, and that choice determines your future. Every hour, every day, every year. Because attention is never neutral. It is always creating something. The question is whether it is creating the life you want, or the life you will eventually regret. The disciplined person understands that focus is not an occasional act. It is a way of living, a daily commitment, a repeated decision, a deliberate investment. And every investment creates a return. Some returns create freedom. Others create frustration. Choose carefully. Because your future is being built right now. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Right now. With every choice about where your attention goes, remember this. Whatever receives consistent attention grows. That applies to discipline. It applies to focus. It applies to success. And it applies to every distraction that steals your potential. Where attention goes, results follow. Never forget that. Because once you understand this principle, you begin to see why so many people remain trapped. They are not failing because they lack ability. They are failing because they are feeding the wrong things. And one of the biggest things they feed is comfort. Comfort feels harmless. Comfort feels safe. Comfort feels deserved. But comfort has quietly become one of the greatest obstacles to discipline. You now understand the power of attention. Next, you must understand the danger of comfort. Because what feels good today can quietly steal everything you want tomorrow. Chapter 4. Comfort is quietly destroying you. Most people fear failure, but failure is not the greatest threat to your future. Comfort is. Failure is obvious. Failure gets your attention. Failure forces reflection. Failure teaches lessons. Comfort does none of those things. Comfort whispers. Comfort seduces. Comfort reassures. Comfort tells you everything is fine, even when your potential is slowly disappearing. That is why comfort is dangerous. It rarely feels dangerous. That's the key. No one wakes up and says, "Today I will destroy my future." Instead, they choose comfort. One comfortable decision, then another, and years later, they wonder where the time went. They wonder why their goals remain unfinished. They wonder why their lives look exactly the same. The answer is simple. Comfort became a habit, and habits become identities. You have a choice. Every day, you can choose comfort, or you can choose growth. But you cannot consistently choose both, because growth requires friction. Growth requires resistance. Growth requires discomfort. Every meaningful transformation begins when comfort ends. Think about the gym. Muscles do not grow because they remain comfortable. They grow because they are challenged. They grow because they are stressed. They grow because they are forced to adapt. Without resistance, there is no growth. Without challenge, there is no progress. Without discomfort, there is no transformation. The same principle applies everywhere. Your mind grows through challenge. Your confidence grows through action. Your discipline grows through resistance. That's why disciplined people stop running from discomfort. They understand its purpose. They understand its value. They understand that discomfort is often a sign of growth. Most people interpret discomfort as a warning. Disciplined people interpret discomfort as an opportunity. There is a difference. The average person asks, "How can I avoid this?" The disciplined person asks, "What can this teach me?" That question changes everything. Consider the simple choice between a workout and a couch. The couch is comfortable. The workout is uncomfortable. The couch asks nothing of you. The workout demands effort. The couch provides immediate pleasure. The workout provides delayed rewards. And because human beings naturally seek comfort, the couch often wins, at least in the short term. But what happens over time? The comfortable choice creates discomfort. Poor health, low energy, reduced confidence, regret. While the uncomfortable choice creates comfort, strength, health, vitality, self-respect, freedom. The rewards are reversed. The comfortable path feels good now and bad later. The disciplined path feels difficult now and rewarding later. That's the key. Successful people understand this principle. They learn to tolerate temporary discomfort in exchange for long-term freedom. Unsuccessful people often do the opposite. They seek temporary comfort and inherit long-term consequences. You have a choice. Choose your discomfort, because life will provide it either way. You can endure the discomfort of discipline, or the discomfort of regret. You can endure the discomfort of effort, or the discomfort of missed opportunities. You can endure the discomfort of growth, or the discomfort of stagnation. Either way, discomfort is coming. The question is which version you want. This principle extends beyond physical challenges. Consider difficult conversations. Most people avoid them. Why? Because they are uncomfortable. Confrontation is uncomfortable. Honesty is uncomfortable. Boundaries are uncomfortable. Speaking the truth is uncomfortable. So people avoid. They stay silent. They tolerate behaviors they should address. They postpone conversations they should have immediately. And for a moment, they feel relief. Comfort wins. But eventually, the problem grows. Resentment grows. Frustration grows. Conflict grows. The temporary comfort creates a larger future discomfort. Again, the rewards are reversed. The difficult conversation feels uncomfortable today, but creates peace tomorrow. Avoidance feels comfortable today, but creates problems tomorrow. This pattern appears everywhere in life. Saving money is uncomfortable. Debt is uncomfortable. Choose one. Studying is uncomfortable. Ignorance is uncomfortable. Choose one. Training is uncomfortable. Weakness is uncomfortable. Choose one. Growth is uncomfortable. Regret is uncomfortable. Choose one. That's the reality. The disciplined person understands there is no escape from discomfort. There is only a choice between productive discomfort and destructive discomfort. That's the key. Many people spend years trying to build a comfortable life. But comfort alone never creates fulfillment. Achievement creates fulfillment. Progress creates fulfillment. Growth creates fulfillment. Purpose creates fulfillment. And all of those require discomfort. Imagine a life with no challenges, no resistance, no difficult decisions, no risks, no growth. At first, it sounds appealing, but eventually it becomes empty. Human beings are not designed merely for comfort. They are designed for growth. That is why achievement feels satisfying. That is why mastery feels meaningful. That is why overcoming obstacles creates confidence. Because deep down, you know you earned it. You don't need their permission. You don't need permission to challenge yourself. You don't need permission to leave your comfort zone. You don't need permission to pursue growth. You simply need the courage to choose discomfort deliberately. Day after day. Moment after moment. Decision after decision. This is how discipline is built. Not in comfort, not in convenience, not in ease, but in resistance. Every time you do what is difficult instead of what is easy, discipline grows stronger. Every time you choose effort over avoidance, discipline grows stronger. Every time you choose growth over comfort, discipline grows stronger. At first, these victories seem small, almost insignificant. But they compound, just like distractions compound, just like habits compound, just like success compounds. Eventually, the person who consistently chooses growth becomes unrecognizable from the person they once were, not because they changed overnight, but because they repeatedly chose discomfort when comfort was available. That's the difference. It's not about comfort. It's about growth. Remember that phrase. It's not about comfort. It's about growth. The next time you want to quit. The next time you want to avoid responsibility. The next time you want to choose the easy path. Ask yourself one question. Will this help me grow? Because growth is the goal, not comfort. Comfort feels good for a moment. Growth changes your life. Never forget that. The strongest people are not those who avoid discomfort. They are those who learn to use it. They understand that resistance creates strength, that challenge creates confidence, that effort creates freedom, and that discipline is forged in moments when comfort says stop, and you choose to continue. You now understand the hidden danger of comfort. But discipline requires more than enduring discomfort. It requires something even deeper. It requires trust. Trust in your own word. Trust in your own commitments. Trust in yourself. Because every promise you keep strengthens discipline, and every promise you break weakens it. Chapter 5. Train yourself to do what you said you would do. There is a reason many people struggle with discipline. It is not because they lack intelligence. It is not because they lack opportunity. It is not because they lack potential. The real reason is much simpler. They no longer trust themselves. That may sound harsh, but it is true. Every time you make a promise to yourself and fail to keep it, something happens beneath the surface. Something invisible. Something dangerous. You weaken trust. Not trust in other people. Trust in yourself. And once self-trust begins to disappear, discipline becomes almost impossible. Because discipline is built on confidence. Not confidence that you can do everything. Confidence that you will do what you said you would do. That's the key. Think about someone you trust deeply. Why do you trust them? Because their words and actions match. When they say they will do something, they do it. When they make a commitment, they honor it. Consistency creates trust. Reliability creates trust. Follow-through creates trust. Now ask yourself an uncomfortable question. Would you trust someone who constantly broke promises? Someone who repeatedly said one thing and did another? Probably not. Then why should your mind trust you if you do the same? You have a choice. You can become someone whose actions support your words, or someone whose words mean nothing. Every day, you're making that choice. Most people don't realize how often they break promises to themselves. They promise to wake up early, then hit snooze. They promise to exercise, then skip the workout. They promise to read, then spend the evening scrolling. They promise to save money, then buy something unnecessary. The promises seem small, but the consequences are not. Because every broken promise sends a message that says, my commitments are optional. My standards are flexible. My word does not matter. Repeat that message long enough, and it becomes an identity. That identity becomes your reality. That's why discipline is not a personality trait. It is a repeated action. Nobody is born disciplined. Nobody enters the world with iron self-control. Discipline is built. Action by action. Decision by decision. Promise by promise. Every disciplined person you admire followed the same process. They trained themselves to do what they said they would do. Nothing more, nothing less. That's the key. People often overcomplicate discipline. They imagine massive transformations, dramatic changes, extraordinary effort. But discipline rarely begins with something big. It begins with something small, something almost insignificant. A simple promise, and then keeping it. Consider the habit of reading 10 pages every day. 10 pages is not impressive. 10 pages will not transform your life overnight. 10 pages will not make headlines, but that isn't the point. The point is keeping the promise. The point is showing yourself that your word matters. The point is strengthening self-trust. One day becomes 1 week. 1 week becomes 1 month. 1 month becomes 1 year. Suddenly, you've read thousands of pages. You've gained knowledge. You've built consistency. But most importantly, you've built trust. You became someone who follows through. That's the real victory. Small promises create powerful identities. Never forget that. The same principle applies to waking up at the same time every day. Many people underestimate this habit, but it teaches something powerful. It teaches obedience to your own standards. The alarm rings. The bed feels comfortable. Excuses appear. But you get up anyway. Why? Because you said you would. That's it. No negotiation. No debate. No emotional discussion. You made a commitment. Now you honor it. This is how discipline grows. Not through intensity, through consistency. Most people focus on motivation. Disciplined people focus on reliability. Motivation comes and goes. Reliability stays. Motivation depends on feelings. Reliability depends on standards, and standards are stronger than feelings. You don't need their permission. You don't need permission to become reliable. You don't need permission to become disciplined. You don't need permission to raise your standards. You only need to start honoring your word, again and again, day after day. Many people sabotage themselves because they set unrealistic goals. They promise too much, too quickly. They decide to wake up 3 hours earlier, exercise 2 hours a day, read a book every week, meditate for an hour, change their entire life overnight, and then they fail. Not because they are incapable, because they created promises they could not sustain. The result? Another broken commitment, another blow to self-trust, another reason to doubt themselves. That's why discipline should begin small, small enough to succeed. small enough to repeat, small enough to maintain. Success builds confidence. Confidence builds consistency. Consistency builds identity. Identity builds discipline. That's the process. That's the key. Imagine two people. The first person makes huge promises and rarely follows through. The second person makes small promises and consistently keeps them. Who becomes more disciplined? The second person. Every time. Because discipline is not measured by the size of the promise. It is measured by the consistency of the follow-through. Small promises create powerful identities. The person who reads 10 pages every day becomes a reader. The person who walks every day becomes active. The person who saves a small amount consistently becomes financially disciplined. The person who honors commitments becomes trustworthy. Not just to others, to themselves. And that changes everything, because once you trust yourself, discipline becomes easier. You stop doubting your ability to follow through. You stop questioning your commitments. You stop relying on motivation. You simply act. Action becomes normal. Consistency becomes normal. Discipline becomes normal. The strongest people are not those with extraordinary willpower. They are those who have trained themselves to trust their own word. When they make a commitment, they follow through. When they create a standard, they uphold it. When they say they will do something, they do it. Even when nobody is watching, especially when nobody is watching. Because true discipline is private. It happens in quiet moments. Moments where nobody would know if you quit. Moments where excuses seem reasonable. Moments where comfort seems attractive. And yet you continue. Because your word matters. Because your standards matter. Because your identity matters. You have a choice. Every promise you make is an opportunity to strengthen trust, or weaken it, an opportunity to build discipline, or destroy it. Choose carefully. Because your future is shaped by what you repeatedly do, not what you repeatedly intend. Remember this: discipline is not a personality trait. It is a repeated action. Self-respect is built through keeping promises to yourself. And small promises create powerful identities. Master this principle, and you become someone who can be trusted. Most importantly, trusted by yourself. And when self-trust becomes strong, something remarkable happens. You become willing to sacrifice immediate pleasure for future rewards. You become willing to wait. You become willing to invest. You become willing to delay gratification, and that is where discipline becomes truly powerful. Chapter 6. Master the power of delayed gratification. One of the biggest differences between successful people and unsuccessful people is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not luck. It is not education. It is time horizon. Successful people are willing to sacrifice today for tomorrow. Unsuccessful people sacrifice tomorrow for today. That's the key. Think about that for a moment. Every day, people make choices that reveal how they see the future. Some choose immediate pleasure. Others choose long-term rewards. Some choose comfort now. Others choose freedom later. And over time, those choices create completely different lives. The tragedy is that immediate gratification feels good, very good. That is why it is dangerous. You receive the reward immediately. The pleasure is instant. The effort is minimal. The consequence is delayed. And because the consequence arrives later, most people ignore it. That's how the trap works. The extra purchase feels harmless. The skipped workout feels harmless. The wasted hour feels harmless. The abandoned commitment feels harmless. But life is not built on individual moments. Life is built on accumulated moments, and accumulation never lies. A single poor decision rarely destroys a life. 1,000 repeated poor decisions often do. You have a choice. You can consume the reward now, or you can invest in a larger reward later. Every day presents that choice. Every hour presents that choice, and every choice is shaping your future. Most people live emotionally. They ask, "What feels good right now?" Disciplined people live intentionally. They ask, "What serves my future?" That single question changes everything, because the future is built by people who are willing to wait. Waiting is difficult. Patience is difficult. Discipline is difficult. That is exactly why they are valuable. If everyone could delay gratification, everyone would be successful. If everyone could remain patient, everyone would achieve mastery. If everyone could sacrifice temporarily, everyone would create freedom. But most people won't. Most people choose the immediate reward. That's why the disciplined person gains an advantage. Consider money. A person receives income and immediately spends it. A better phone, a bigger television, another unnecessary purchase, another temporary excitement. The pleasure lasts a few days, sometimes a few hours. Then it disappears. The money is gone. The future remains unchanged. Now consider another person. They earn the same amount, but they save. They invest. They delay gratification. At first, their life appears less exciting. They don't get immediate rewards. They don't get instant pleasure. But years later, the picture changes completely. One person owns liabilities. The other owns freedom. One person consumed. The other invested. That's the key. Short-term sacrifice creates long-term freedom. The same principle applies to knowledge. Many people want expertise. Few people want the process required to earn it. They want confidence. Without preparation. They want results. Without effort. They want mastery. Without repetition. But life doesn't work that way. The reward comes after the work, not before. The harvest comes after the planting, not before. The achievement comes after the sacrifice, not before. Disciplined people understand this. That is why they remain patient while others quit. Imagine two people. Both want to become experts in their field. The first person studies consistently, reads daily, practices daily, improves daily. The second person becomes frustrated. They want immediate results, immediate recognition, immediate success. When progress feels slow, they lose interest. 5 years later, the outcome is obvious. One person has become highly skilled. The other is still searching for shortcuts. The difference was not talent. The difference was patience. The difference was delayed gratification. The first person was willing to work without immediate rewards. The second person was not. That's the key. Every meaningful achievement requires patience. Every meaningful achievement requires waiting. And waiting is one of the hardest disciplines in modern life. Because modern life trains you to expect everything instantly. Instant communication, instant entertainment, instant delivery, instant answers, instant stimulation. You become accustomed to speed. Then you expect success to arrive the same way. But success does not operate on the schedule of convenience. Success operates on the schedule of growth. And growth takes time. A tree does not become strong overnight. A skill does not develop overnight. A business does not grow overnight. A disciplined mind does not emerge overnight. Everything meaningful requires patience. You don't need their permission. You don't need permission to be patient. You don't need permission to play the long game. You don't need permission to invest in your future. You simply need the courage to continue when results are invisible. That is where most people quit. Not when the work is difficult, when the rewards are delayed. The gym feels pointless after one workout. Reading feels pointless after one chapter. Saving money feels pointless after one deposit. Practicing feels pointless after one session. The progress is invisible. The reward has not arrived. The temptation to quit appears. That is the test. The disciplined person understands something important. Just because progress is invisible does not mean progress is absent. Read that again. Just because progress is invisible does not mean progress is absent. Roots grow before trees become visible. Foundations are built before buildings rise. Character develops before success appears. The work is happening, even when you cannot see it. That's why patience matters. Patience allows discipline to compound, and compounding changes everything. A small daily investment becomes a fortune. A small daily improvement becomes mastery. A small daily effort becomes transformation. Not because of intensity, because of consistency. And consistency requires patience. Most people dramatically overestimate what they can achieve in a month, but underestimate what they can achieve in 5 years. Why? Because they focus on immediate rewards. Disciplined people focus on accumulated rewards. They understand that small actions repeated long enough become extraordinary. That's the key. Short-term sacrifice creates long-term freedom. Say it again. Short-term sacrifice creates long-term freedom. The sacrifice is temporary. The freedom is lasting. The discomfort is temporary. The reward is lasting. The effort is temporary. The transformation is lasting. This mindset changes how you view every decision. Suddenly, discipline becomes easier. Not because the work changes, because the perspective changes. You stop asking, "What do I get today?" and start asking, "What am I building?" That question creates patience. That question creates persistence. That question creates discipline. Every time you choose the future over the present, discipline grows stronger. Every time you delay gratification, discipline grows stronger. Every time you invest instead of consume, discipline grows stronger. You become someone capable of waiting. Someone capable of building. Someone capable of achieving what others never will. Because most people cannot wait long enough. You have a choice. You can demand rewards before the work, or you can trust the process. You can seek immediate pleasure, or you can build lasting freedom. You can live for today alone, or you can create a future worth living. The disciplined person chooses the future, again and again, day after day, year after year, and eventually the rewards arrive, not because they were lucky, but because they stayed committed long after others quit. Remember this: every meaningful achievement requires patience. Results often arrive long after effort begins. Short-term sacrifice creates long-term freedom. Master that principle, and you gain an advantage that most people never develop. But patience alone is not enough. Even disciplined people struggle when their environment constantly works against them. Because willpower has limits, and true discipline becomes much stronger when it is supported by structure. You have learned how to delay gratification. Now you must learn how to make discipline easier. Chapter 7. Build systems that make discipline easier. Most people think discipline is a test of willpower. It isn't. At least not for long. Willpower is valuable, but willpower is limited. It rises. It falls. It gets stronger. It gets weaker. It changes with stress. It changes with sleep. It changes with emotion. That is why relying entirely on willpower is a mistake. The most disciplined people in the world do not depend on willpower. They depend on systems. That's the key. A system is a structure that makes the right action easier and the wrong action harder. A system removes unnecessary decisions. A system reduces temptation. A system creates consistency. And consistency is the foundation of discipline. Think about it this way. If discipline were only about willpower, then every successful person would spend every day fighting themselves. But that is not what happens. Highly disciplined people organize their lives in ways that support success. They don't make discipline harder. They make discipline easier. You have a choice. You can fight the same battle every day, or you can build a system that wins the battle for you. Most people choose the fight. Disciplined people build the system. That is the difference. Consider a simple example. A person wants to focus on important work, but their phone sits directly beside them. Every notification appears instantly. Every vibration demands attention. Every temptation is within reach. Now they must rely on willpower every minute. Every notification becomes a battle. Every distraction becomes a decision. Every interruption becomes resistance. Eventually, they lose. Not because they are weak, because they built an environment designed for failure. Now imagine the opposite. The phone is in another room. Notifications are disabled. The workspace is organized. Distractions are removed. Suddenly, focus becomes easier. The battle disappears. The temptation still exists, but it is no longer constantly present. That's the key. Environment influences behavior, far more than most people realize. Many people blame themselves for lacking discipline, when the real problem is their environment. Imagine trying to eat healthy while surrounding yourself with junk food. Imagine trying to read while a television plays constantly. Imagine trying to save money while endlessly browsing products online. Imagine trying to focus while every distraction remains available. The environment matters. And disciplined people understand this. They do not rely on endless self-control. They design environments that encourage success. You don't need their permission. You don't need permission to change your environment. You don't need permission to remove distractions. You don't need permission to build systems. You simply need to take responsibility. Responsibility is powerful, because once you stop blaming motivation, you begin creating structure. And structure changes everything. Most people approach discipline backward. They say, I need more motivation. I need more willpower. I need more determination. Maybe, but what they often need is a better system, because systems outperform motivation. Every time, motivation gets you started. Systems keep you going. Motivation is emotional. Systems are practical. Motivation is temporary. Systems are repeatable. That's why disciplined people build routines. A routine eliminates uncertainty. The decision is already made. The action already has a place. The behavior already has a time. No debate, no negotiation, no confusion, just execution. Think about waking up at the same time every day. At first, it feels restrictive, but eventually it becomes automatic. You no longer waste energy deciding. The routine decides for you. That is the power of systems. Every decision you eliminate saves mental energy. Every routine you create increases consistency. Every structure you build strengthens discipline. That's the key. The goal is not to become stronger than every temptation. The goal is to encounter fewer temptations. Most people misunderstand this. They think disciplined people constantly resist temptation. The truth is often the opposite. Disciplined people remove temptation before resistance becomes necessary. They understand a simple principle: remove the battle, win the war. If unhealthy food creates problems, don't keep it nearby. If social media destroys focus, create limits. If distractions interrupt work, eliminate access. If certain environments encourage bad habits, leave those environments. The solution is often simpler than people think. Remove the obstacle. Make success easier than failure. Remember that phrase. Make success easier than failure. Because human behavior follows the path of least resistance. Always. If distractions are easier than focus, most people become distracted. If comfort is easier than growth, most people choose comfort. If failure is easier than success, most people drift toward failure. Your responsibility is to reverse the equation. Make focus easier. Make growth easier. Make discipline easier. Make success easier than failure. You have a choice. You can design your life intentionally, or allow it to be designed accidentally. The results will be dramatically different. Consider someone who wants to read more books. Most people approach this with good intentions. They promise themselves they will read. Then they wait. Eventually, they forget. Nothing changes. A disciplined person builds a system. A book is placed beside the bed. Reading happens at the same time every night. The habit is attached to an existing routine. The environment supports the behavior. The system creates consistency. The results become inevitable. This principle applies everywhere. Want to exercise consistently? Schedule it. Want to write consistently? Create a dedicated workspace. Want to learn consistently? Assign a fixed learning hour. Want to save money consistently? Automate the process. The more automatic a behavior becomes, the less willpower it requires. That's the key. Discipline should not depend on daily inspiration. Discipline should be supported by daily structure. The strongest systems also create accountability. Because accountability increases follow-through. Not because someone is watching, because expectations become clear. A schedule creates accountability. A calendar creates accountability. A routine creates accountability. A system creates accountability. The more clearly defined the behavior, the more likely it happens. This is why vague goals rarely succeed. Exercise more is vague. Walk for 30 minutes at 7 o'clock every morning is specific. Specificity creates action. Action creates consistency. Consistency creates discipline. Most people spend years trying to become disciplined, when what they really need is structure. Structure creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence creates identity. Identity creates discipline. The process is simpler than people imagine. You don't become disciplined first. You build systems first. Then discipline grows naturally. That's the key. Remember this. Discipline becomes stronger when supported by structure. Environment influences behavior. Systems reduce reliance on willpower. And success becomes more likely when you make success easier than failure. The strongest people are not always those with the greatest willpower. They are often those with the best systems. Because systems work even on difficult days. Systems work when motivation disappears. Systems work when energy is low. Systems create consistency. And consistency creates results. But there is still one challenge that defeats many people. Even with good systems. Even with strong habits. Even with clear goals. It is the challenge of boredom. Because success is rarely exciting every day. Most of the journey is repetitive. Most of the journey is ordinary. Most of the journey feels boring. And those who learn to win boring days eventually win extraordinary lives. Chapter 8. Learn to win boring days. Most people think success happens in dramatic moments. A breakthrough, a promotion, a championship, a viral achievement, a life-changing opportunity. They imagine success as a single event, a moment where everything changes. But that is not how success is built. Success is built long before it becomes visible. Success is built on ordinary days, repetitive days, unremarkable days, boring days. That's the key. The greatest achievements in the world are usually the result of small actions repeated for years. Not extraordinary effort, extraordinary consistency. The problem is that consistency is rarely exciting. And because it is not exciting, most people abandon it. They crave novelty. They crave stimulation. They crave constant excitement. But mastery does not care about excitement. Mastery responds to repetition. You have a choice. You can chase excitement, or you can build excellence. The two are often very different paths. Think about the beginning of any goal. Everything feels exciting. A new fitness plan, a new business, a new skill, a new habit. Motivation is high. Energy is high. Possibilities seem endless. But eventually, something happens. The excitement fades. The novelty disappears. The process becomes familiar. The work becomes repetitive. The routine becomes boring. And that is where most people quit. Not because the goal became impossible, because it became ordinary. That's the key. Most people are not defeated by difficulty. They are defeated by boredom. The disciplined person understands this. They do not expect every day to feel exciting. They do not expect every day to feel inspiring. They do not expect every day to feel meaningful. They understand that progress often feels repetitive, and they continue anyway. That is why they succeed. The musician does not become exceptional by performing on stage. The musician becomes exceptional by practicing scales, again, and again, and again. The audience never sees those hours. The audience sees the performance. But the performance was built during the boring practice sessions. The athlete does not become elite on competition day. The athlete becomes elite during thousands of training sessions. The entrepreneur does not build a successful company through occasional inspiration. The entrepreneur builds it through daily operations. Emails, meetings, planning, problem solving. Repetition. The boring work is the important work. Remember that phrase. The boring work is the important work. Because boring work creates extraordinary outcomes. Most people overlook this truth. They are willing to work when it feels exciting. They are willing to work when they feel motivated. They are willing to work when progress is obvious. But the moment the process becomes repetitive, they begin searching for something new, something more exciting, something more stimulating. And in doing so, they abandon the very process that creates success. Discipline requires a different mindset, a mindset that values consistency over excitement, a mindset that values process over emotion, a mindset that values repetition over novelty. That's the key. The disciplined person learns to respect ordinary days, because ordinary days create extraordinary results. One workout seems insignificant. One chapter seems insignificant. 1 hour of focused work seems insignificant. 1 day of discipline seems insignificant. But repeated hundreds of times, those actions become life-changing. Compounding is invisible in the beginning. That is why people underestimate it. The first day feels meaningless. The 10th day feels ordinary. The 100th day begins to create momentum. The 1000th day creates mastery. The results were never created by one exceptional effort. They were created by countless ordinary efforts. You don't need their permission. You don't need permission to be consistent. You don't need permission to repeat the basics. You don't need permission to continue when the process feels boring. You simply need to understand the value of repetition. Repetition creates skill. Repetition creates confidence. Repetition creates competence. Repetition creates mastery. Every expert was once a beginner repeating simple actions. Every master was once a student practicing fundamentals. Every successful person spent years doing things that appeared unremarkable. That is the reality. The world celebrates outcomes. Discipline celebrates process. Most people want visible progress every day, but progress doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes progress is invisible. Sometimes progress is simply showing up. Sometimes progress is simply refusing to quit. Sometimes progress is simply doing the work again. And again. And again. That's the key. Success often looks boring from the inside. People see the achievement. They do not see the repetition. They see the result. They do not see the routine. They see the victory. They do not see the years of preparation. That is why discipline matters. Discipline allows you to continue when excitement disappears. Discipline allows you to continue when recognition is absent. Discipline allows you to continue when progress feels slow. Anyone can work when motivated. Very few can work when bored. And those few gain an enormous advantage. Imagine two people pursuing the same goal. The first person only works when inspired. The second person works regardless of emotion. At first, there is little difference, but over time, the gap becomes enormous. One person accumulates thousands of hours of practice. The other accumulates hundreds. One person builds momentum. The other repeatedly starts over. One person masters the process. The other remains dependent on feelings. The outcome becomes inevitable, not because of talent, because of consistency. That's the key. Winning boring days creates winning years. Winning winning years creates winning lives. It is that simple. And yet, it is one of the hardest lessons to accept, because human beings naturally seek stimulation. The mind wants novelty. The mind wants excitement. The mind wants immediate rewards. Discipline teaches something different. Discipline teaches patience. Discipline teaches repetition. Discipline teaches commitment. Discipline teaches that the process matters more than the mood. The strongest people are not those who feel motivated every day. They are those who remain committed every day, especially on boring days, especially on difficult days, especially on ordinary days, because those are the days that matter most. The boring work is the important work. Never forget that. The workout you don't feel like doing, the chapter you don't feel like reading, the project you don't feel like working on, the routine you don't feel like following. Those moments matter, not because they are exciting, because they are transformational. They teach your mind that commitment is stronger than emotion, and that lesson changes everything. You have a choice. You can chase excitement, or you can build mastery. You can pursue novelty, or you can pursue excellence. You can abandon the process when it becomes repetitive, or you can continue. The disciplined person continues, and eventually, consistency produces something powerful. Confidence. Not the confidence that comes from positive thinking. The confidence that comes from proof. Proof that you can continue when others stop. Proof that you can remain calm when pressure appears. Proof that your discipline is stronger than your emotions. Because sooner or later, life will test everything you have built. Pressure will arrive. Setbacks will arrive. Unexpected challenges will arrive. And in those moments, Your ability to remain disciplined under pressure becomes your greatest advantage. You have learned how to win ordinary days. Now it is time to learn how to remain strong when life becomes difficult. Chapter 9. Become unbreakable under pressure. Anyone can appear disciplined when life is easy. Anyone can stay focused when conditions are perfect. Anyone can remain confident when everything is working. But discipline is not measured during comfortable moments. Discipline is measured under pressure. That's the key. Pressure is the great revealer. It reveals strengths. It reveals weaknesses. It reveals habits. It reveals character. Most importantly, it reveals what you have been practicing all along. Many people believe pressure creates character. It doesn't. Pressure reveals character. Remember that. Pressure does not create character. It reveals it. When stress arrives, people do not suddenly become different. They become more of who they already are. The disciplined person becomes disciplined under pressure. The prepared person becomes prepared under pressure. The focused person becomes focused under pressure. And the unprepared person becomes exposed under pressure. That is why preparation matters. That is why habits matter. That is why discipline matters. Because sooner or later, life will test everything you have built. You have a choice. You can prepare before pressure arrives, or you can be overwhelmed when it does. Most people wait. Disciplined people prepare. Think about a professional athlete. Championship games are filled with pressure. Millions of people are watching. The stakes are high. Expectations are enormous. But elite athletes do not rely on luck during those moments. They rely on training. They rely on repetition. They rely on habits developed long before the pressure appeared. Why? Because pressure reduces your ability to think clearly. Pressure narrows focus. Pressure amplifies emotions. Pressure exposes weaknesses. And when that happens, you fall back on what you have practiced. That's the key. Under pressure, you do not rise to your expectations. You fall to your level of preparation. The same principle applies in everyday life. A financial setback, a failed project, a health challenge, a difficult relationship, unexpected criticism, unexpected failure. Pressure appears in many forms, and every form asks the same question. What have you trained yourself to do? Have you trained yourself to panic? Or have you trained yourself to respond? Have you trained yourself to quit? Or have you trained yourself to continue? Have you trained yourself to react emotionally? Or have you trained yourself to stay focused? The answer determines the outcome. Most people underestimate the importance of emotional control. They assume discipline is only about action. But emotional control is discipline. In many situations, emotional control is the highest form of discipline. Because emotions become loud under pressure. Fear becomes louder. Doubt becomes louder. Frustration becomes louder. Anger becomes louder. The mind begins creating stories, worst-case scenarios, catastrophic predictions, negative assumptions. And if you allow those emotions to take control, performance collapses. That's why panic is so dangerous. Panic destroys clarity. Panic destroys judgment. Panic destroys focus. Panic creates mistakes. The disciplined person understands this. They do not ignore emotions. They manage them. They acknowledge them. But they do not obey them. There is a difference. You can feel fear without following fear. You can feel doubt without surrendering to doubt. You can feel frustration without becoming controlled by frustration. That's the key. Emotional control protects focus during difficult moments. Imagine two people experiencing the same setback. Both lose an important opportunity. Both experience disappointment. Both feel frustration. The first person reacts emotionally. They complain. They blame. They become distracted. They lose momentum. Weeks pass. Nothing improves. The second person responds differently. They accept reality. They learn the lesson. They adjust their strategy. They continue moving forward. The setback still hurts. The disappointment is still real. But progress continues. 5 years later, their lives look completely different. Not because one avoided failure, because one managed failure. That is the power of emotional control. Failure is inevitable. Defeat is optional. Every successful person has experienced setbacks. Every successful person has experienced rejection. Every successful person has experienced disappointment. The difference is not the absence of failure. The difference is the response to failure. That's the key. Pressure reveals habits. Stress exposes weak habits. When life becomes difficult, people naturally return to familiar patterns. If your habit is avoidance, pressure increases avoidance. If your habit is distraction, pressure increases distraction. If your habit is discipline, pressure increases discipline. This is why daily discipline matters so much. You are not merely building habits for easy days. You're building habits for difficult days. The workout matters because of what it teaches. The routine matters because of what it teaches. The repetition matters because of what it teaches. Every disciplined action becomes training for future pressure. You don't need their permission. You don't need permission to stay calm. You don't need permission to remain focused. You don't need permission to continue after failure. You simply need to remember your standards. Pressure often creates the illusion of urgency. Everything feels immediate. Everything feels critical. Everything feels overwhelming. But disciplined people slow themselves down. They breathe. They think. They evaluate. They respond, instead of reacting. That pause is powerful. That pause protects performance. That pause prevents emotional decisions, and emotional decisions are often expensive. One angry decision can damage a relationship. One fearful decision can destroy an opportunity. One impulsive decision can create years of regret. The disciplined person understands this. That is why they value calmness. Calmness is not weakness. Calmness is strength under control. Anyone can lose control. Few people can maintain it, especially when pressure rises. That's why calmness becomes a competitive advantage. While others panic, you think. While others react, you decide. While others become overwhelmed, you continue. And over time, that advantage compounds. Most people spend their lives avoiding pressure. But pressure is not the enemy. Pressure is the test. Pressure shows you where discipline is strong. Pressure shows you where discipline is weak. Pressure shows you what still needs improvement. Seen correctly, pressure becomes a teacher. Every challenge becomes feedback. Every setback becomes information. Every failure becomes instruction. That's the key. The disciplined person does not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" They ask, "What is this teaching me?" That question transforms adversity into growth, and growth transforms pressure into strength. You have a choice. When pressure arrives, you can collapse, or you can adapt. You can react emotionally, or you can respond intelligently. You can focus on the setback, or you can focus on the next step. The disciplined person always returns to the next step, because progress creates stability. Action creates clarity. Movement creates momentum, and momentum creates resilience. Remember this: pressure does not create character. It reveals it. Stress exposes weak habits. Emotional control protects focus. Panic destroys performance. Master these lessons, and you become difficult to break. Not because life becomes easier, because you become stronger. And ultimately, that is the purpose of discipline. Not merely to survive pressure, but to build a life guided by intentional choices rather than emotional reactions. You have learned how to handle distraction. You have learned how to overcome comfort. You have learned how to delay gratification. You have learned how to remain strong under pressure. Now it is time for the final lesson, the lesson that connects everything together. Because discipline is not something you occasionally practice. It is something you become. Chapter 10. Live like your future is watching. You have reached the final chapter. But this is not the end. It is the beginning. Because everything you have learned in this audiobook points to one truth. Discipline is not a task. It is not a technique. It is not a temporary challenge. Discipline is an identity. That's the key. Most people spend their lives trying to do disciplined things. A smaller group becomes disciplined people. There is a difference, a very important difference. When discipline is merely something you do, it depends on circumstances. When discipline becomes who you are, it remains regardless of circumstances. The first approach is fragile. The second is powerful. Think about someone who says, "I am trying to exercise." Compare that to someone who says, "I am the kind of person who trains." The behavior appears similar, but the identity is completely different. One person is attempting an action. The other person has adopted a standard. Standards are stronger than goals. Identity is stronger than motivation. That is why lasting transformation always begins with identity. You have a choice. You can spend your life chasing discipline, or you can become disciplined. The difference changes everything. Throughout this audiobook, we have discussed distractions, comfort, self-trust, delayed gratification, systems, consistency, pressure. Each lesson points toward the same destination, the creation of a new identity, because every action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Every decision matters, not because it changes your life immediately, because it changes your identity gradually. One workout does not transform you, but it casts a vote. One chapter read does not transform you, but it casts a vote. One difficult conversation does not transform you, but it casts a vote. One act of discipline does not transform you, but thousands of them create a new person. That's the key. Identity is not created in a day. Identity is created through repetition. Every action says something. Every action teaches something. Every action reinforces something. The question is simple. What are your actions teaching you? Are they teaching discipline? Or are they teaching excuses? Are they teaching consistency? Or are they teaching avoidance? Are they teaching strength? Or are they teaching weakness? Because your future self is listening. Your future self is watching. And your future self will inherit the consequences. Most people imagine the future as something distant, something separate from the present. But the future is being built right now. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Right now. With every choice you make. The future version of you is being created by today's actions. The person you become in 5 years is hidden inside the decisions you make today. That's why discipline matters. Not because it creates immediate rewards, because it creates future realities. Imagine meeting yourself 10 years from now. Imagine seeing the person you became. The question is not whether that future exists. The question is what kind of future you are creating. Will that future version of you be grateful or disappointed? Will that future version of you be strong Or full of regret? Will that future version of you thank you for today's discipline, or suffer because of today's excuses? You have a choice. Every day, every hour, every moment, and every choice leaves a mark. Most people underestimate the power of ordinary actions. They are waiting for dramatic opportunities, dramatic breakthroughs, dramatic transformations. But extraordinary lives are usually built through ordinary consistency. The athlete becomes elite through ordinary training sessions. The entrepreneur becomes successful through ordinary workdays. The writer completes a book through ordinary pages. The disciplined person creates an extraordinary life through ordinary choices. That is the secret. Extraordinary results are often created by ordinary actions repeated long enough. That's the key. The world celebrates dramatic outcomes. Discipline celebrates daily behavior. The world notices the victory. Discipline notices the preparation. The world admires the result. Discipline respects the process. That is why disciplined people continue even when nobody notices. They understand something important. The process is creating the person, long before it creates the outcome. You don't need their permission. You don't need permission to become disciplined. You don't need permission to pursue excellence. You don't need permission to build a better future. You only need a decision to honor your standards, again and again, day after day, year after year. Many people spend their lives searching for confidence, but confidence is not found. Confidence is earned. Confidence grows every time you keep your word, every time you choose discipline, every time you follow through, every time you do what you said you would do. Eventually, you stop hoping you can succeed. You know you can, not because of positive thinking, because of evidence. You have proven it to yourself. That is real confidence. And real confidence is built through discipline. Think about the cumulative effect of years of focused action. One disciplined day seems insignificant. One disciplined week seems ordinary. One disciplined month seems modest. But years of disciplined action create extraordinary outcomes. Years of focused effort create mastery. Years of wise decisions create freedom. Years of consistency create greatness. The results appear dramatic. The process was not. The process was simple, repeated, ordinary, consistent. That is the power of compounding. Most people never experience it because they quit too soon. They change direction too often. They chase shortcuts. They abandon the process before the rewards arrive. The disciplined person stays. The disciplined person continues. The disciplined person trusts the process. And eventually, the process delivers. That's the key. Success is rarely a mystery. Success is usually consistency extended over time. You have spent this audiobook learning principles, but principles only matter when applied. Knowledge without action changes nothing. Understanding without execution changes nothing. Potential without discipline changes nothing. You have a choice. You can leave this audiobook inspired, or you can leave transformed. Inspiration fades. Transformation lasts. Transformation begins with action. Today, not next week, not next month. Today, choose one distraction to eliminate. Choose one habit to strengthen. Choose one commitment to honor. Then repeat it. Tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Because discipline is not built through a single act. It is built through repeated acts. Until discipline becomes identity. Until consistency becomes normal. Until excellence becomes expected. Until your future begins to reflect your standards. Remember this final truth. Every action becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Your future is shaped by today's choices. Discipline is ultimately an identity, and your future depends on what you can ignore today. Never forget that, because the life you want is not created by what you occasionally do. It is created by what you repeatedly do. The distracted world will continue demanding your attention. Comfort will continue calling your name. Excuses will continue offering relief. But discipline gives you another option, a stronger option, a better option, the option to become the person your future deserves. So when this audiobook ends, let the lesson remain. Protect your attention. Honor your commitments. Choose growth over comfort. Delay gratification. Build strong systems. Win boring days. Stay calm under pressure. And above all, remember this. Your future depends on what you can ignore today. The choice is yours, and it always has been. You now know the truth. Discipline is not motivation. Discipline is not talent. Discipline is not luck. Discipline is a decision repeated until it becomes identity. Every chapter of this audiobook points to the same lesson. Stop negotiating. Protect your attention. Reject unnecessary distractions. Choose growth over comfort. Keep your promises. Delay gratification. Build strong systems. Master repetition. Remain calm under pressure. And remember this, your future depends on what you can ignore today. The world will continue competing for your attention. Distractions will become louder. Excuses will become easier. Comfort will always invite you back. But discipline gives you a choice, a different path, a stronger path, a path that most people will never take. So when this audiobook ends, do not simply feel inspired. Take action. Choose one distraction to eliminate. Choose one promise to keep. Choose one disciplined action you will repeat every day for the next 30 days. Then prove it, not to the world, to yourself. Because the life you want is waiting on the other side of the discipline you build today.